We are going to begin. We're Lamed Daled Amud Beis. We're on 34b. We'll just go. We were in the end of Taisva. We're in the middle of that Taisvus, the last Taisvus, very Yesidistic, very important Taisvus, an interesting Taisvus. Um, so let us do that. Let us go over that. Okay, 34b. The bottom Taisvus here, we were talking about this interesting way that the Gemara tells us how Shmuel um, made sure that the community wouldn't get ripped off, have to overpay for their hadassim. What did he do? He gave a little threat to the peddlers who would sell the hadassim. He told them, listen, a few people are going to raise the prices and not sell it the value, but instead you're going to make the prices much higher. I'm going to give a verdict that the halacha follows Reb Tarfon, which is a much more lenient way of doing things, and therefore you're going to really lose if I do that. If I say the halacha follows Reb Tarfon, you're going to get no business. So you better just keep the prices the way they are, and I'll keep quiet, and this way you'll at least make some money. But if you raise the prices, I'm going to tell everyone that halacha follows Reb Tarfon. According to Reb Tarfon, you can use hadassim that are cut off, and the tops are cut off, and it's no problem. The people they're not gonna be buying from you. They'll be able to find hadassim that the tops were cut off. They won't have any problem. Every person that has a hadassim bush will invite us to come and cut off the next shearing from the next, because the top is cut off. They took the first ones. Everyone will just be using the extras, the extra length of those hadassim, and it'll be kosher. So this was the threat that Shmuel gave to these people, to these peddlers, I guess, or these salespeople who sold the hadassim. The Gemara says, so you see from there that he must have really held that the halacha is like Reb Tarfon, because that's what he said. He said, I'm going to tell people that the halacha follows Reb Tarfon, and if he didn't hold that way and he was just making a threat, why did he say I'll follow Reb Tarfon? There's even a more lenient view, the view of Rabbi Akiva. And if he was just making a threat, give a better threat. That if you don't keep the prices down, I'm going to tell everyone that the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva that you only need one hadas, not three. That would have even been a bigger threat. So you see that if he didn't say that threat, instead he said the threat of I'm going to tell everyone the halacha follows Reb Tarfon, it must be because he probably holds of Reb Tarfon, and that's why he chose to give that threat, because that's who the halacha follows. So Taisvus is bothered with a few things. One thing that bothers Taisvus is that is that common? Do we find in other places where they'll make a threat that doesn't follow halacha? Or do we find in other places that they don't do such a thing? In other words, our Gemara implies like you could do, like it's possible to say that he made a threat that didn't fit the halacha. Because the conclusion of the Gemara, the way the Gemara ends off here, which I guess is very important now, is because the Gemara said he must follow Reb Tarfon. The Gemara answers that and says no. It's possible that he really doesn't hold of Reb Tarfon, and he was just making a threat. Why did he say Reb Tarfon instead of Rabbi Akiva? You want to know why he said this threat instead of the other threat? If neither of them he holds like, maybe, the Gemara is saying maybe he doesn't hold like any of them, and he was just making a threat, and he just chose Rabbi Tarfon instead of Rabbi Akiva because there's a certain benefit that Reb Tarfon has that actually was more beneficial than Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds all you need is one. That's for sure a benefit. You only need one, not three. But Reb Tarfon has a different benefit. He needs three, but they all could be cut on the top. So the Gemara's conclusion is that he chose to make that threat because, at least in his community or in that area at that time, in that era, it was easier to find ones that were snipped off, cut off, clipped off on the tops. That was much easier than find a good one, that even if it's just one. So this was a better threat. That was the Gemara's conclusion. So what the Gemara is basically saying is it's possible that Shmuel was just making a threat, even though he doesn't hold that way. So Tais is wondering, let's compare that to other cases. Do we find similar things in other Gemaras? Do they make a threat? Do they hold that way? Not necessarily. Is it possible they'll make a threat and they don't hold of it? And then the other question that bothers Taisvis, and this is maybe even a stronger question. Who is the halacha like? Reb Tarfon? So why doesn't Shmuel paskin and make announcements about it, even without this peddler gouging the prices and making the prices go through the roof? He should have told everyone who the halacha follows. Why is he only making it as a threat? If this is the real halacha, which the Gemara seemed to say before this, that's the accepted view, so then why didn't Shmuel just paskin that way? Why is he saying, if you don't do this, if you do that, I'm going to make an announcement? What do you mean, make an announcement? If that's the halacha, you should be making such an announcement, telling people who the halacha is. That's a very powerful question. Like, why is he keeping it to himself? People need to know what to do. You got to know the halacha. So this is this Taisus, this bottom Taisus deals with all these issues. And he says, number one, he brings a case from the Gemara Pesachim. What does it say over there? In the Gemara Pesachim, it talks about using earthenware utensils that are clean. Can you keep them over Pesach and then use them after Pesach? So the machlok is Rav and Shmuel. Rav holds that you have to break them before Pesach. You can't kosher an earthenware utensil. You can kosher other things, metal and things could be koshered. Earthenware you can't kosher. So according to Rav, what's going to happen is after Pesach, you're going to have in the walls of the earthenware vessel, which you used to cook with, you're going to have chametz in those walls. There's tastes of, there's flavors inside the wall of the pan, of the pot. And after Pesach, when you cook with it, that flavor is going to go into the food. It's going to prohibit it. The Gemara talks about technical differences. If it's the same type of food, in other words, you were cooking in this pot spaghetti. So if you cook again spaghetti in it, it'll be min b'mina. It talks about, so the flavor goes in and it'll prohibit it. And Rav holds, no matter what you cook with it afterwards, it's going to always prohibit it. And he holds that chametz shavar Pesach is d'oraisa, it's a biblical law. And he holds you got to break the earthenware vessels. Shmuel holds, no, chametz shavar Pesach is a rabbinic law, and you don't have to be concerned after Pesach because of a flavor that's inside the walls, and because of the rabbinic law, it's not an issue. And he holds you're allowed to keep it till after Pesach, and you could use it after Pesach. It's not an issue of chametz shavar of Pesach. It's chametz that Pesach, in those days they didn't sell their chametz, so you can't, that wasn't an option. And so they would end up having these earthenware vessels. So according to Shmuel, you would be allowed to keep that vessel and use it after Pesach. And it's not a problem. It's not like it has treif in it. It has chametz that was never destroyed before Pesach. But that chametz is only a flavor of chametz. It's not an actual piece of chametz. It's inside the wall of the vessel. And it's only a rabbinic law And according to Shmuel, he says it's okay, it's fine.
Rabbi,
However,
why wasn't it an option to sell the chametz?
well, because you have to understand that in today's day and age, we it's a common thing to have to have it done as this whole procedure, because we own so much food that it would be like a major loss for us to we have refrigeration, we have freezers, we have stuff that lasts for a long time. We have area with storage, so for us it's a very normal thing. We need to sell our chametz, otherwise we're going to destroy it all before Pesach. It'll be a huge loss. In the olden days, what did they have already? They had a few potatoes and a few onions. They didn't have what we have, and they didn't and so they wouldn't have 10 bags of bagels in their freezer and 5 boxes of cereal and vodka that lasts 6 months, and things like that. And so it wasn't common practice to it wasn't very common. There was an option to sell the chametz, but it wasn't as common as it is now. So here, every Rav has to sell the chametz for the community. Like you have restaurants, you have this, you have stores, and even many regular people. They sell the chametz. In those days,
Then you had liquor dealers.
Yeah,
They were the ones who had to sell the chametz.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask about.
People. So in the community that had a liquor dealer, that Rav sold the chametz. That Rav. But I'm just saying, like the regular common. The commoners didn't necessarily sell their chametz. It wasn't the common thing. So the one city, the guy who distributed the liquor for the whole 10 cities, maybe his Rav sold chametz for him. But so anyway, so the story here is the Gemara in Psachim, where it talks about this situation of earthenware vessels. It has a very similar story there, where Shmuel told the people who sold the earthenware vessels, he said, you better sell them after Pesach at a normal price, because if you don't, I'm going to make an announcement that the halacha follows Reb Shimon, that chametz after Pesach is not a problem inside the wall of an earthenware vessel, and no one's going to buy any vessels from you. So the point is that you see over there, the Gemara says, so Shmuel must hold like Reb Shimon. And that's why it says over there that Shmuel made this threat. Again, the Gemara proves. How do we know that Shmuel? The Gemara says Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon. How do we know it? Because he made a threat to the people and to the peddlers who sold earthenware vessels. And he said, if you don't keep the prices down, I'm going to make an announcement that the halacha follows Reb Shimon, that you're allowed to benefit from this type of chametz after Pesach, because it's not the typical chametz after Pesach. It's only a flavor inside the wall of an earthenware vessel, and it's only rabbinic, and it's not a problem. And I'm going to make an announcement like that. Now, the Gemara could have answered there and said, what do you mean? He doesn't necessarily hold that way. He's just threatening, right? But the Gemara doesn't do that. There, the Gemara says he must hold that way. So Tosfos is bothered. You see over there, the Gemara doesn't say doesn't have that thought that he might have just made a threat. So why in our Gemara is it possible that he just made a threat? So that's what Tosfos is bothered with. It seems that the Gemara assumes if he made a threat, he probably held that way. He's not going to make a threat if he doesn't hold that way. That's what you see in that Gemara, because the Gemara there accepts that as a proof that he must hold that way. So the Gemara's answer, the Tosfos answers, and he says that there's a difference. That there's a difference over here. He says over there, what's the issue? He's going to make a threat just because they're making the prices higher? Here, it's a mitzvah to fulfill, and people are going to lose out in the mitzvah if you make the prices higher for hadassim. So here it's possible to say he might have made a threat, even though that's not the halacha. He might have made such a threat. There's no reason to make a threat unless that's actually the halacha. So that's Tosfos's answer to reconcile the Gemara there, where we assume if he made a threat, he holds that halacha. And here, where he makes a threat, the Gemara says maybe he was just threatening and he doesn't hold that way. Could be he holds a different opinion. And he could have said Rabbi Akiva's threat. And the Gemara says, but nevertheless, he chose this threat because it was a good threat. And he maybe doesn't even hold that way. So our Gemara accepts that it's possible to make a threat, for a Rav to make such a threat in order to, to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, even though it might not be the actual halach. And so Tosfos says, yeah, there's a difference. Here it's to fulfill a mitzvah. And he therefore wanted them to keep the prices down so that they could fulfill a mitzvah. There, it's just benefiting the community. So there, the Gemara assumes that he's not going to make a threat to benefit the community unless that's the actual halacha. So now comes the next question of Tosfos. Oh, so this is the real halacha over there, that he holds like Reb Shimon, that you're allowed to use the earthenware vessels. Why didn't he make a big announcement if that's the real halacha? So, and why is he making it only as a threat? If you don't keep the prices down, then I'm going to make an announcement who the halacha is like. What do you mean? If that's the halacha, and he really holds that way, go tell everyone. What are you keeping it to yourself for, Shmuel? Shmuel, tell everyone what the halacha is. You're only gonna pull out your cards when the other guy does the wrong thing. You're only gonna tell everyone about the halacha, who the halacha follows if the guy makes the prices too high. Otherwise, you just keep it to yourself. Let them all do things that they don't need to do. Be strict and things that they don't have to be strict about. So Tosfos is bothered. Why isn't he making such a drasha? And the same question really applies to our Gemara, really. Because our Gemara said earlier, even though this story, it's possible to explain that he was just making a threat, but we do know that he actually holds this way because of the other statement we have, that halacha karab tarfin, that Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel, that's who the halacha goes like. Now, Shmuel did say that the halacha follows Reb Tarfon. The question is, why in this story why is Shmuel using it as a threat, not making an announcement? If that's the way Shmuel holds, you should be announcing this. So the answer is that over there, the Gemara answers that was the place where Rav lived. The other opinion, that was their city. Because that was the city of the other rabbi, so Shmuel couldn't make announcements who the halacha is like. But he could use it as a threat because he holds that this is who the halacha is like. So he was able to use it as a threat. But he wasn't going to make an announcement in the other rabbi's town that you should follow my opinion. No, that rabbi is the accepted view in this town. I'm not mixing in. I'm stepping on his toes. He's the Rav of this town. It's called the Mara D'Asra. That's a famous term. The master of the town, the rabbi of each city. He's the Mara D'Asra. You don't, you're some passing through rabbi. Don't go and step on the toes of the Mara D'Asra, the Rav of that town. He passed in this way. If he holds that that's the halacha, who the halacha follows, you give him the respect of his town. Nevertheless, Shmuel did make a threat to the guy because he held the halacha follows the other way. He felt he had a good, valid threat. The question is, why over here did Shmuel not do that? Why didn't Shmuel tell everyone the halacha follows Reb Tarfon? Here is the big question of Tosfos. Over there, the Gemara answers that it was Asra Derav. But here, why is Shmuel not making an announcement? The halacha follows Reb Tarfon. Instead, he uses it as a threat. Over here, he says, if you don't keep the prices down, I'm going to tell everyone the halacha is like Reb Tarfon. Why doesn't he tell everyone the halacha is like Reb Tarfon anyway? They should know who the halacha follows. So Tosfos answers, you know why? Because it's Hider mitzvah. Even according to Shmuel, that the halacha follows Reb Tarfon, that you don't need to have the tops of the hadassim, but is a Hider to have it. So he didn't want to announce that you don't need it because people will beautify the mitzvah if he doesn't make this announcement. So he figured let them beautify the mitzvah and be a little more machmir, and the prices are not bad. But if they higher the prices, then he said, then I'll go out, and spread the word that the halacha follows Retiree, and they don't have to go make themselves crazy to go and get these perfect hadassim. But beside hidur mitzvah, he said, for that, I'm not going to make an announcement that halacha follows Retiree. For that, let them do the hidur. Let them do a little more beautiful, which might mean that Reb Tarfon himself agrees that it's ideal to use something that's complete, that's better. This is kosher, but of course that's nicer. There's a famous question of, do you have hidur mitzvah on what you think looks nice, or is hidur mitzvah only what we find in halacha? There is such a discussion. So Tosfos could mean that, well, it definitely looks nicer. So he's just talking on a practical level. This looks nicer. You should do it with a nicer thing, even though it's not brought in halacha that you need to have the tops. Or possibly even Reb Tarfon holds that this is kosher, but it's not mitzvah min hamuvchar. This is the proper mitzvah should be complete. Could be even Reb Tarfon holds that way. It's really it's mishum hidur mitzvah. Not just because we think it's a hidur, but maybe because it looks nice, but because the essence of the mitzvah to be more complete, even though it's kosher this way, but it would be ideal to have it complete. And so it's part of the mitzvah to have it more hidur, to have a complete one, and therefore he didn't make such an announcement.
Rabbi, where are you? Where's the place?
Where am I? I'm going through the bottom Tosfos, because he explains this story. So we're in the Gemara on 34b, right before the Mishnah. 34b, before the second Mishnah, which is maybe about 20 lines up from the bottom of the page. 18 lines up from the bottom of the page. We're going to be starting the Mishnah just a few minutes. The final, but I'm doing Tosfos just to finish off. So he explains the story here with why didn't Shmuel make this announcement? I think it's a very strong question. Why didn't Shmuel make this announcement? And the answer is because of hidur mitzvah. And then comes the final point of Tosfos. The final point of Tosfos is that there's a story about Runya and Ravina in Bava Basra. And the story over there is that it has to do with participating in your neighbor's building a fence that you're benefiting from. And over there it talks about a case where, let's say, you built a fence around 3 walls of your neighbor's yard. He's still not fully fenced in. So he's not fully benefiting from this. He's not properly benefiting from the fence. But if you make the 4th wall of the fence for him and he's totally locked, closed in, so then there's different opinions as to what you can make him pay. For example, if you use the made of metal fence or a thick fence, can you make him pay half of the thick fence? Or can you only make him pay for a fence of, you want to make it nice, that's your problem. He would benefit from a fence of reeds, so all he has to do is participate in the cost of a fence of reeds. You made it bigger, that's fine. You paid a little extra, you did that's up to you. He's not obligated to pay you back for that, but he would be obligated possibly to pay for a fence of reeds. And then there's another option. Maybe he would pay what it would cost to have a guard watch the field so that no one steals stuff. In other words, instead of the fence, maybe it's cheaper to have a guard there. So maybe that would be a different option that maybe you could pay. Anyway, so it talks about the different ways of calculating according to different opinions as to what he's obligated. So the story was Ravina had all around Runya's field. So he blocked him in with a fence on all 4 sides, and this was very beneficial. Now, Runya said, what do you mean beneficial? I don't need anything from you. I don't need this fence. So Ravina did something interesting. He sent his servant He says, go steal some whatchamacallits from some of the figs from Runya's property. He saw Runya outside. He says, go to Runya's property, go take some of those figs. So he goes into the property. And of course, Runya sees this guy about to take some figs. He screams at him, oh, don't take any, get out of my property. So Ravina says, I see you benefited from the fence. So you need a fence, huh? So, he proved to him that, you don't want people stealing, right? You need a fence. I see you, so you're benefiting. So the story is they went in front of Rava, and Rava said that all Ravina is asking from you is the cost of a watchman. So why don't you just pay that? And he says, and if you don't pay it, I'm going to make you pay the cost of what he used as a fence material, which was more expensive than the regular fence. And you're going to have to pay a lot more. So the story there is that Rava was paskening like this opinion of Rav Huna according to Rabbi Yossi. Rava was paskening according to this opinion, Rav Huna according to Rabbi Yossi, and he was saying that pay him, only the small amount, and if not, I'm going to paskin like this opinion. That's very surprising. Who's the halacha like? If the halacha is like that opinion, then he's got to pay the whole thing. All you're going to do is pay a little. Again, we have the same issue of the rabbi making a threat. And we would like to know what the halacha is. Why is it only a threat? If you don't do this, then I'm going to paskin this way. How does that fit into Jewish law? So the Taisus explains, he says, well, this case was unique because in this case, Ravina only asked him, he already forgave him to pay the full of the amount that he really should have paid. He said, oh, you don't want to pay that full amount? Just pay this. And the guy said, no. Then he said, okay, fine, just pay that amount. So Ravina was already moichel. That's why Rava paskin that just pay him the amount of the cost of a watchman. But if not for the fact that Ravina was moichel, forgave him for the rest, then he would have even had to pay the full. He would have had to pay the full amount of the halacha, who the halacha follows. Again, so Taisus is bothered with these cases where there seems to be a halacha, and yet the Rav is not paskening to the community what the halacha is. And the explanation that we have is basically three different scenarios. One case, it has to do, he's not paskening that way because in that city, there was a different Rav who was the main Rav of the city. So that would be a reason not to paskin who the halacha follows because the other Rav holds differently. The other option is our Gemara. And in our case, he wasn't announcing that the halacha is like Retiree because he wanted people to use better looking hadassim, even though they could have gotten away with a more cheaper hadas that's clipped off on the top. But he wanted them to get more muhudar hadassim, better, beautiful hadassim. So therefore, he didn't announce that the halacha follows Retiree. In the case of Baba Basra, where it had to do with making someone pay for the fence, he didn't didn't announce that who the halacha really is like. No, he didn't enforce who the halacha really is like over there because the other rabbi he forgave, he forwent the extra money. He was forgiving on the extra money, and he allowed him to just get away. He offered him this option, so that's why Rava didn't paskin who the halacha really follows. He let him off the hook with a lot less because that's what Ravina only requested. He basically forgave him for the rest. Okay, so that concludes this previous Gemara. Now we're up to the new Mishnah. We're on page 34b. Must be about 20 lines from the bottom of the page. No, not 20, about 14 or 15 lines from the bottom of the page. 34b. Avram. Okay. Okay. So we're learning about Esrog now. So we've learned about the Aravos. We learned about Hadassim. We've learned about Lulav. Now comes the Esrog. So the Gemara, the Mishnah says, Esrog HaGozel, the stolen Esrog, V'hayavesh, in the dried out Esrog. Puzzle, it's invalid. Shel Asherah v'shel Ir Anidachas, if the Esrog was from an Asherah tree, which was worshipped for idol worship, or it was from a city that has to be burned because of idol worship, Ir Anidachas, puzzle, that type of Esrog that comes from there is invalid. Shel Arla, an Esrog that comes from a tree that's within its first 3 years. Avram, do you have the place? We're on 34b, the Mishnah, the second Mishnah, the 14 lines from the bottom of the page, the new Mishnah about Esrog. 34b. David, you want to tell us what page it is in the Steinsaltz, the Mishnah?
Yeah, let me just look. Hold on a second.
So
it says 160, 169.
Okay, Avram, 169.
170.
170, okay. Okay, so we're talking about the Esrog. If it's stolen, it's invalid. If it's dried out, it's invalid. If it's from an Asherah tree, which is worshipped for idol worship, it's invalid. Ir Anidachas, it comes from the city that has to be burned, it's invalid. Orla, it's from the first 3 years of the Esrog tree. The Esrog tree was just planted, so it's invalid, it's puzzle. Shel Truma Tameo, if it's from a tithing that was supposed to go to the Kohen, and it became impure, it's Tameh. So that also is puzzle, it's invalid. Shel Truma Tahira, if it's from a tithing that's supposed to go to the Kohen, called Truma, and it is Tahar, it's not impure, it's pure, it's supposed to be given to the Kohen, and maybe it was given to the Kohen, we'll soon see. But it says, Lo Yitol, you shouldn't take it. Don't use it. V'im natal kosher. If it was used, it is kosher. Now, what about if it's shel demai? If it's from questionable produce that might not have had meiser taken from it. Demai was a situation where the simple people used to be very careful to take truma, and they would give it to the kohen, but they weren't so careful to take meiser. Majority would give meiser, but there was a minority of people that didn't. It's called demai. Demai meant we're unsure, we're skeptical if it was tithed, because it's from someone who's not 100% fully committed to fulfilling the mitzvahs perfectly. So because of that, we call their produce demai. And so there was always an issue of buying from them and eating at their house. It was always a whole question of how do you deal with it. And demai normally had special rules. On Shabbos, how do you separate? Do you want to separate the food there afterwards, before Shabbos, after Shabbos? How do you get around these problems? So here you have an arla, you have an esrog that's from someone who we're not sure if they took meiser from it, if they tithe the esrog properly, meaning that when 100 esrogim were picked off that tree, so of course they took like 2%, 1/50th, which would be 2% to the kohen, and then you have 100 esrogim on that from that tree, so they should take about 10 and give it to the Levi. And then the guy keeps the others. Of course, he has to take Meiser Sheni and bring it, eat in Yerushalayim, or Meiser Ani, give it to the poor person. But basically, he gets to keep a nice portion of them, whether it's 80 of them. Well, he lost 2, then about 10 more, or 9.8 more, whatever. He lost 2. He gives 2 to the Kohen, about 10 to the Levi. So that's 12 or off from 100. So he got 88 left. He might have to give Meiser, depending on the 3rd or 6th year, he gives to the poor person, a tithe, or he has to eat it himself in Yerushalayim with his friends, whatever, in Yerushalayim. So that would be from 88. He's got 8 less now, so he's got about 79. He's got 79 esrogim to deal with. Now those 79 esrogim he tithe. But what about if you take from someone who's not 100% reliable? So he might not have done the tithing that you're supposed to take 10 and give it to the Levi. So that's called demai. So the Mishnah says, Beis Shammai Poislin, Beis Shammai says that such an esrog, that's demai, is puzzle, it's invalid. Beis Hillel Bashir. But Beis Hillel says it's kosher. Beis Hillel holds that such a esrog is kosher. B'shal Meiser Sheni b'Yerushalayim lo yitol. What happens if you have an esrog that's from that second tithing that you're supposed to eat in Jerusalem? That doesn't apply every year, the second tithing. It only applies in the first year of the sabbatical year, of the Shemitah cycle, first, second year, the 4th and 5th year, 1, 2, 4, and 5. Those years you do Meiser Sheni. You take from the tithe after you give the Levi his tithe, then you take another tithe and you eat it, you take it yourself to Yerushalayim and you enjoy it there and rejoice over it. And the question is, so you took it to Yerushalayim, can you bench lulav on such an esrog? So, Shal Meiser Sheni b'Yerushalayim lo yitol, you shouldn't. If not al kosher, if you did bench with such a esrog, the law is that it's kosher. And it makes sense. You're allowed to eat it there at Yerushalayim, so you're allowed to. But the Evid, if you did it, if you used it, it's kosher. If you shouldn't have, it's we'll see in the Gemara what the reason. Okay. Now,
why doesn't the Mishnah say l'chatchila?
it does. It says lo yitol.
Yeah, lo yitol l'chatchila.
Don't take it. That's what the words mean.
Oh,
Lo yitol means don't take it. Don't do it. L'chatchila is just an add-on, which is not needed in this scenario because goes right afterwards. It says in not al kosher. So you see, it's clearly this is called l'chatchila. This is called b'diavad. In other words, this is not a case where it would need to add that. It sort of spells it out with other words. It says lo yitol, don't take it, and if you took it, it's kosher. Now the Mishnah continues. It says also chazozis. If a blister grew on the esrog, al rubai, on the majority of the esrog, or another case is nitla pitmasai, the pitum was removed. That would be an additional case. Or another case is nikla, the esrog was peeled. The peel came off. And that's nikla. Nista. What happens if it was cracked? There's a crack in the esrog from the top to the bottom. Nista. There's like a crack in it. Nikav v'chaser kolshu. It has a hole and it's missing a drop. So some of it, and any amount, kolshu, any amount is missing from it. Hustle, in all these cases, the esrog is invalid. And of course, there's different reasons for each of these cases. Again, we'll have to go through them. Also, chazozis al miyutai. Then the Mishnah comes and says, what happens if a chazozis, if a blister grows on it, al miyutai, on a minority of the esrog? What about nital uktzai? If the stem, which is what we would call the bottom of the esrog, that attaches it to the to the tree, if that was removed. Nikav, what happens if it was pierced? It has a hole. V'loy choser kolshu, but it's not missing anything. For example, if you stick a needle into the esrog, if you stick a needle in the esrog, you didn't remove any. If you stick a spoon into the esrog and take out a spoonful, then you removed something from it. But if you took a needle and stuck it in, so you did not remove from the esrog anything. You just made a hole in it, and it's loy chaser kolshu. You didn't remove anything from the esrog. Kosher, it will be kosher. There's a famous question on these cases. Why does the Mishnah have to say both options? It says if it was if you had a hole and it's missing something, it's puzzle. If you have a hole and it's not missing something, it's kosher. It would seem to be obvious, from that, from the opposite case. You have a blister on majority, it is puzzle, invalid. If you have blisters on minority, it's obvious that it's going to be kosher. So why does it have to tell us that it's going to be, why does it have to tell us the flip side of it if you can easily deduce it from the first statement? The commentaries talk about it. One commentary says it's just the common way the Mishnah does things, but one of the other commentaries says that there is each one is teaching on a certain law that they learn from it. So maybe we'll go into it tomorrow, what exact law you learn from each one. But here we're just getting a general picture. So we've got the stolen lulav, the dried out esrog, the stolen esrog, the dried out esrog, the Asherah esrog, the Eranidachas, city that's supposed to be burned esrog, the Arla esrog, we have Truma Tameya esrog. All of these were invalid. Then we had case where it's not, where it's you shouldn't use it, but it's kosher if you did. Truma tahira, if it's with truma, but it's tahar, it's pure. So then you're not supposed to use it. If you did, it's okay. We have the case of Demai, Machlokes Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, and we talked about Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. You should, again, you have a case of L'chatchila b'diavad. You shouldn't use it, but if you did, it's kosher. We have the case of the chazazis, where you have the blister, majority blisters on the majority of the esrog. It's of course invalid. And we had the case of the pitum came off the top, which is the most famous thing you always hear about. That don't drop my esrog, the pitum is going to come off, and so that is invalid if it comes off. Niklaf, if it was, we spoke about if it was peeled or if it was cracked, it has a crack in it, it's missing something, the pierced it has a hole, it's missing something, so there it's going to be puzzle. And then we talked about the flip side of the other cases where you have blisters, but they're not on the majority. You have the case of there's a piercing, but pierced, but with a needle, but nothing was removed. So then you have natal uktzai, that the stem came out from it, but it is all of these other cases are kosher. Now we have another case, esrog akushi. You have a esrog that is from Ethiopia, an Ethiopian esrog. So the Mishnah says puzzle, it is invalid. And then it says, yes.
He says it's a Cushi esrog, which is black like a Cushite. Not necessarily that it's from Ethiopia, but the color is like black.
Right. So if you look at the bottom Rashi, the bottom, the second line up from the bottom, Rashi learns Hakushi means Shaba me Eretz Kush. Kushi means that it came from Eretz Kush, and it happens to be black. It's shachar. But the word Hakushi, the way Rashi translates it, it means it's from Ethiopia. Now, it happens to be black, and there's going to be an issue, which we'll see. but it's the proper, the way Rashi is translating it is it's Ethiopian. Now then it says that v'hayarik karti, the esrog that's green like leek. So what's the law with a green esrog that's green like a leek? Reb Meir machshir, Reb Yehuda poisel. Reb Meir says it's kosher. Reb Yehuda says it's pasul. Meir says no problem. Reb Yehuda says it's pasul. It's invalid. What's the reason? Shaloi nigmar. The reason is that we saw Daf Lamed Aleph. We saw this brought down that the problem seemingly is if it's green that it's not finished. At least the Gemara's understanding on Lamed Aleph on 31 was that it's not finished. Remember we spoke about Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold the esrogim? The species need to be hadar. They have to be beautiful. And the Gemara concluded that no, he doesn't hold it has to be beautiful. And why is if it's green? Why is it invalid? The Gemara said because it's not because it's not beautiful. It's because like nigmar pri, it didn't reach its growth, its final growth. And we mentioned over there, Tosfos over there mentioned that esrogim that are green, that are gonna turn the proper color afterwards, it's not a problem.
Rabbi.
They're kosher, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. We said when they become, if after it's harvested, it's gonna turn the proper color, gold or yellow. It's kosher. The problem is if it's really, it's considered unripe if it's not gonna actually ripen. Then it means you harvested it unripe. But the fact that it's harvested green and it's going to turn yellow, that means that it's not considered unripe. Yes, David.
It says over here, it has the halacha. It says an esrog that's green like the color of grass is pasul. Most authorities hold that if it's clear that left alone, its color will eventually change to the standard color it's fit, even if it's green. However, one should ensure that there's at least some yellow in it. The optimal and most beautiful color is yellow like wax, though some insist that the esrog have at least some green in accordance with the Zohar. That brings down Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 648:21 for that.
Right. Okay, yeah. It's a little premature because we'd like to see what the Gemara has to say first in the commentaries. Then we'd like to see the halacha. But okay, it's fine. It's okay. You know what I mean? We like to see the sources. Get the Gemara's.
Sorry. I thought it would be interesting.
Jumping the gun. No, it
Don't
is.
Don't worry, Rebbe. We won't remember.
Right. Right. When you do the research to get the answer, you know what? That's like the cheating way. We want to figure out, see from the Rishonim, see how the commentaries deal with it. Okay. All right. So
I've already forgotten.
We're up to the sheer esrog hakatan, the size of a small esrog. Again, so the green we said is a machlokes Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Reb Meir says kosher, Reb Yehuda says pasul. Now we've got the sheer esrog hakatan, the size of a small esrog. What's the minimum size of an esrog? Reb Meir says ke'egois, like a walnut. Reb Yehuda Aimer kebetza. Reb Yehuda says like a egg. That's the minimum size of an esrog. And the understanding again would be something to do with the fact that it's not completed its growth. It's not fully grown yet. Now, Vagodol, what about the biggest maximum size? Kadesha yoichaz shnayim. That the measurement of how big is in order to hold two in your hand, that you should be able to fit two in one hand. These are words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosi says, afilu echad b'shtei yodav, you could have it jumbo. Even if you have one in two hands, because it's so big, it's kosher. So how do you shake the lulav and esrog according to Rabbi Yossi? He's holding one esrog in two hands. One, how do you hold? Where's he holding the lulav? So this seems to be a little source to the fact that the opinion that said in the halachas gedolos, we saw that there was an opinion in Tosfos. Tosfos didn't want to agree with it, but seems to be accepted in halacha that if you take each one individually and wave them, it's kosher. As long as you have them, either all in front of you or you do them. You make sure to do all of them. But basically, it is kosher if you do them individually. So you could have, according to Rabbi Yossi, you have even one that's you need to that one you need two hands to hold, both hands to hold, will still be kosher. After you shake the esrog, you put it down. You shake the lulav, shake the hadasim and aravas. Okay, here. Okay, so that is the conclusion of the Mishnah. Now comes the Gemara Lamed Hey Amud Aleph 35a. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in a brisa. Creates hadar, says creates hadar in the Torah that you have to take this fruit, either called hadar that is beautiful. We'll soon see different meanings. Hadar, hadir, hadar. Soon see all different drushes, but the wording in the Torah is creates hadar. This beautiful fruit, fruit from a beautiful tree, or a beautiful fruit from a tree. So it says in the brisa, what does that mean? What does pre-eitz hadar mean? Eitz shatam eitzo yapir yoshava. It's from a tree that the tree and the fruit are the same flavor. What type of fruit is the same flavor as the tree? Havayomer is that esrog. This would be an esrog. And what does that mean? Did you ever taste the tree of you think an esrog tree really tastes lemony? The tree doesn't. The vart is, what the Gemara means is, what's the fruit of the esrog? On a lemon, the fruit of the lemon, the flavor of the lemon, is the liquid inside, is the juicy part, the pulp. An esrog, there's very minimal juicy part. It's a lot of rind, the white stuff, the white flesh, and a very minimal part has the juice, the pulp. So the esrog fruit really is the rind. It's really that white flesh. That's the fruit. That white flesh tastes the same as the tree. And that's the meaning that it's a eitzoi upiriyoi shava, the flavor of the tree and the fruit. What's the fruit? It means that the fruit of the esrog is the white, not the juicy part inside like a lemon. It's a whole different, it's like a whole different species than a lemon. And therefore the fruit is so that is a tree, that is a fruit that it fits into this bill of pre-eitz hadar, fits the bill because pre-eitz hadar, it's a pre that eitzoi upiriyoi shava, that the eitz and the pre is the same flavor, and that is the esrog. So the Gemara says, really, there's other cases that are similar. The ema pilpulin. The Gemara says maybe peppers. Peppercorns, excuse me. Pilpulin not only means pepper, but here it means peppercorns. Tanya, Haya Reb Meir Omer, Reb Meir would say, B'mashma shenemar unatatem kalitz. It says, implied from what it says, that you should plant. When you plant all the trees, and the pasuk says, you should make sure that the first 3 years don't eat from the fruits, and it's a relem that shouldn't be eaten. And in the 4th year, and so on. So it talks about all eitz when you plant all eitz Michael, all fruit trees, and it talks about the laws of Arla, the first 3 years, you're not supposed to benefit from those fruits. And so it says, Eini yoidashu eitz Michael. Wouldn't I know that it's talking about a fruit tree? It says, don't let it be eaten. Obviously, we're talking about a fruit tree, right? It's an edible fruit. So what does it mean? Why does it say kol eitz Michael? It should say kol eitz. Any fruit, any tree that you plant, you can't eat. I know it means a fruit tree. You don't have to say kol eitz Michael. So it's not the place. Any addition eitz Michael. My time of eitz Michael. Why does it have to say a tree that's fruit tree? Could just say a tree. So the understanding is that it's including something that we would not have known. Eitz shatam eitzo yoper yoshava. There's a tree that the stem of it, trunk of it, tastes the same as the fruit. Haviyomer zep pilpulin. This is peppercorns. And that the stem of it and the fruit of it taste the same. And so that's what it's including to tell you, to teach you, pilpulin chayovin ba'arla pilpulin, peppercorns, you have to make sure they are not arla. They need to wait 3 years, and then the 4th year goes to Yerushalayim, at least the ones grown in Eretz Yisrael. And then, and after that, you can finally benefit from it on the 5th year. Fully benefit. The 4th year, you could also benefit in Yerushalayim, but the 5th year, you finally have full access. Free access. Free usage. But it's considered a fruit tree. In other words, we wouldn't have known that it's considered a fruit tree. What would we have thought? So Rashi says we would have thought that it's a vegetable. I don't know exactly how peppercorns look where they grow, but it seems like there's room to say that it should be similar to a vegetable. And vegetable doesn't have the laws of Arla. Of course, vegetables you have to plant every year. So you would never be able to eat any vegetables if there was a law of Arla. So the thing is that this tree, the peppercorns are very similar, I guess, to a vegetable. You might think that it's considered a vegetable. And Rashi says because it's an eitz shuffle, it's a low tree, so you might think it's very close to the ground. You would think it's like a vegetable. The Torah comes and adds a extra word to tell you that it's included in the obligation of Orla. That even peppercorns you have to take Orla from. Now we of course
have a picture if you want.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, well that's nice. The only thing I would have liked to see is that how far it is off the ground, but they're not offering that. So okay, I mean, it doesn't really help us now. The other thing would be nice is to taste the stem. I'd like to taste the stem of it. So that would be to make it really practical. But in any event, the Gemara says that Rashi learns that it's very low, and therefore there's room to say that it might be a vegetable, and that's what the Brisa is coming to teach us. Tosfos has a different interpretation over here. Tosfos wants to learn that because it's going to dry out, peppercorns ultimately dry out, and there's room to say that it's not considered a proper fruit. So Tosfos doesn't like Rashi's interpretation. Could have many trees are very low and still they're called trees. Just because it's low, that's not a reason to think that it might be considered a vegetable. And Tosfos has a different interpretation here, that the reason you would think that it's exempt is because the peppercorns dry out, and therefore it's maybe loses its category of being considered a fruit. So the conclusion of the Gemara is that the Torah adds on the extra word to teach us that it is considered a fruit. And Chayavim Ba'arla, it's Chayav and Arla, and Ein Eretz Yisrael Chasera Klum, that Eretz Yisrael is not missing anything. There's even peppers grow in Eretz Yisrael. Shedemar, as it says, Lo Sechsar Kol Ba, nothing is missing from Eretz Yisrael, and therefore creates Hadar, maybe could mean Pilpulin. This is the Gemara's question. So, in other words, we might have forgotten already what the Gemara brought this in for. The reason the Gemara brought this up is because you might think that there's room to say that you need a tree that tastes the same as the fruit. Well, we have another option, not an esrog, a pilpulin. So maybe the Torah is meaning that you should take pilpulin, peppercorn, for your esrog, as your pre-eitz hadar. So from the species, you don't have an esrog, you'd have peppercorn. And how do we know peppercorn would be considered this fit the rules of esrog, that it's the branch and the fruit taste the same, because it says it in this brisa that it says that's a eitz shatam eitzo yoperio shava, that it tastes the same as its stem, and therefore maybe you should be able to use that as an esrog. So the Gemara answers hasa mishum delight efshar. Over there by peppercorns, you can't say that that's what it means to use as one of the daled minim. Mishum, it's impossible. Heichi navid, how would you use it? Ninkoy chada. You're going to take one, like minkara l'kichasa. It won't be visible what you're taking. If you take a peppercorn, they're tiny, and won't be visible. And one commentary explains over here that it says lakachtem lachem. So from the word lakachtem, it needs to be a lakicha nikeres. It has to be a visible taking, which maybe we'll see more about on Daf Lamed Zayin. So it has to be visible. So you can't mean that. So the Gemara says maybe you should take two or more. Ninkoy trey or tlasa, maybe take two or three. The Gemara says pre-eitz hadar, one. Echad amar Rachman v'lo shnayim u'shleisha peiros hilkach lo efshar. Therefore, it is not possible. It's impossible to say that it means a few peppercorns. Okay, we're going to stop here and have a wonderful day, everyone. Zaygesund.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rabbi.
One second, let me stop the recording.